Welcome back to Sex Talk. Today we have author and broadcaster of Menopause Moments. She's sometimes referred to as the pioneer of the natural menopause movement. Maryon Stewart, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So, regardless of which stage of life they're in, women seem to be embarrassed to talk about vaginal dryness. What can you do, or what can you suggest to make people feel more comfortable?
Well, I think first of all to know that you're not alone. Our last survey on 1,100 women showed that 70% of them were suffering with vaginal dryness. And I remember running one of my courses on sex and associated problems and having a woman burst into tears because she'd never said the words vaginal dryness out loud before. Oh. And someone else was crying because she said her vagina felt like a burning fireball. So she couldn't even sit down, let alone have comfortable sex. And women are just grinning and bearing it. They just think this is part of the aging process. But it actually doesn't have to be that way. It's because they're running on empty, and it's because they're not meeting their needs. Because 100 or so years ago, we weren't living much past 50, so it didn't really matter. But now when you get into your 40s and 50s and your ovaries are winding down and everything is empty, you need to fill it up again so that you feel well and you feel lubricated and juicy so that you can get on with the game in hand and not think that life in the bedroom is over, because it's far from it.
So obviously there's a lot of hormonal changes that happen with menopause and other things, but what are some reasons that maybe younger women might be experiencing such extreme vaginal dryness, like the instance that you were referencing?
I think it's mainly older women, to be perfectly honest, because when you're younger, you've got estradiol still circulating around your system. Sometimes after you've had a baby, you may have a hormonal adjustment, but for the most part, it's as you get into your 40s and then into your 50s, and certainly in your 60s, when things have just completely dried up, the factory that produced all the mucus and the elasticity has closed down, and things go from bad to worse, and you can get really, in fact, bleeding, torn tissues when you try and have penetration. It can be a nightmare if you don't know how to fix it and get yourself back into really good shape.
So we get a lot of your questions about sexual functioning during menopause, because obviously it could really affect your sex life during this period. Anything else that you would want to add to that?
Well, I think it's what you do about it more than, and have hope in your heart that this isn't the end of life in the bedroom, because we know from the survey we did on men that they feel frustrated and rejected. And obviously women don't want to have penetration if it's really painful, and if they're likely to make themselves feel even worse. I mean, for example, when you've got thin tissues, you're much more likely to get a UTI after you've had sex. So it's really important to keep those tissues nice and plump and moist so that you can carry on having really good sex, because you can have the best sex as you get older.
So aside from like hormone replacement therapy or anything like that, what are some natural ways to really keep those tissues lubricated?
Absolutely. So the first thing you need to do is consume Mother Nature's hormones in food. And we talked a little bit about that before when we're talking about libido, how you can consume foods like soy and flax seeds and other things like red clover, herb red clover, all of those things. In fact, funnily enough, the first study I ever saw on this subject was published in the British Medical Journal, and it was a study that was done in Australia where they fed a group of women soy, flax seeds and red clover, and they were able to bring about a similar change in the lining of the vagina as they would have expected to see in women taking HRT. So you can do it naturally. It's really very impressive, but it's knowing how to do it. And the receptor sites don't stay full for very long. They empty out, so you've got to have something for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you need to add these, whether it's edamame beans or flax seeds or whatever it is, into your diet, and maybe take a few supplements as well, because there are some supplements. For example, the sea buckthorn plant has been shown to improve the vaginal lining, the elasticity, the mucus, and there are other things like hyaluronic acid gels that you can use that has a similar effect to HRT. So you don't actually have to use HRT, you can do it naturally.
That's wonderful. It's great to know there's a solution without side effects there.
Absolutely, and then there's red light therapy as well now, which you can use at home. There's an amazing device that looks like a vibrator, and it acts like a vibrator as well as having the red light therapy, and it helps to really rework the tissues and keep them healthy in the long term, and something that you can do as a self-help thing forever. so that you can stay in the driving seat and you don't have to lose this very special part of your life.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and we'll be right back with more Sex Talk.